Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's episode, while this video is likely going live at the end of September or early October, it is indeed July 4th. So to celebrate Independence Day, I am celebrating with some proper American craft beer, jumping in with another Tavour review with one of my absolute favorite styles, and we're going Imperial Stouts again today. You may have already guessed just looking at the labels, at least a couple that we have in the lineup here. We're going to be starting with one of my favorite brewers, Prairie Artisan Ales Birthday Bomb. This was a birthday present to themselves. This is an Imperial Stout brewed with cacao nibs, vanilla, coffee, chilies, caramel sauce, and toffee. I mean, there's just nothing about what they're putting in here that doesn't get me excited. This is 12% ABV. They are based out of Krebs, Oklahoma. Number two, we're jumping over to Untitled Art. This is their Fudgesicle Imperial Stout. This one is also 12% ABV, brewed with evidently just an ungodly amount of Hershey syrup. I don't know if they did any other kind of chocolate in there, but sounds like it's going to be very chocolate forward. Possibly a sweeter Imperial Stout. We shall see. They're out of Wenatchee, Wisconsin. Not sure how to pronounce that city. Nonetheless, rounding this out, we return again to Prairie Artisan Ales. And this is a barrel-aged version of the Birthday Bomb. So this is the exact same beer, all the exact same ingredients, same ABV, only they have barrel-aged it. Now, to be fair, I don't know what type of barrels they used for the barrel aging, nor how long it was aged, but it'll be interesting to see what the barrel does versus the standard version. I'm expecting all three of these beers to be excellent, and I wanted to save three beers that I thought I'd really enjoy to celebrate our independence from those filthy British. I'm only kidding. But nonetheless, it's going to be a really fun video today. I absolutely love Imperial Stouts. Both of these brewers are top tier. I can't wait to jump in. So without further ado, we're going to get started with the Prairie Artisan Ales Birthday Bomb. This one's 12%, as they all are. Okay, so jumping right in with our first beer, the Prairie Artisan Ales Birthday Bomb. Imperial Stout brewed with cacao nibs, vanilla, coffee, chilies, caramel sauce, and toffee. 12% ABV, as they all are today, out of Krebs, Oklahoma. Okay, Prairie Artisan Ales has quickly risen up through the ranks. I mean, honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest with myself, they're probably in my current top 5 favorite brewers, period, of them all on a global scale. Everything I've had that they've produced has just been ridiculously top-notch. I mean, they don't cut corners. Not with their ingredients, not with their beer concepts. I mean, it's all well-crafted, quality ingredients in abundance. So let's jump right in and see how this twist on their classic bomb, the Birthday Bomb, with the addition of the caramel sauce and the toffee, makes this beer a little bit different, a little bit more unique. I do expect this to pour ridiculously dark and thick, as all Prairie Artisan Ales I've had do. Indeed, it is as dark as motor oil and seemingly just about as thick. I'm going to try to give that a little more agitation so it can have a chance at forming a decent head. And actually, that's not bad. That's probably the best pour I've had on a Prairie Artisan beer to date. As anticipated, it is as black as the night. You cannot see through it at all. The head did form reasonably creamy. It's got a lot of medium and larger bubbles, and it's actually reasonably effervescent, so it's going to collapse pretty quickly here. But while the head's going and the effervescence is coming up, letting that aroma rise out of the glass, let's give it a sniff. Smells like absolute heaven. They have very pronounced aromas. On this one, actually, in particular, I can smell the chilies a lot more strongly than I could in their standard bomb. Smells really nice, and indeed their Christmas bomb. And you can definitely pick up that caramel toffee-ish background. I can't tell which is which. It's got that, you know, caramelized sugar quality about it, both toffee and caramel sauce would, but it smells amazing. And you can smell the coffee quite strongly as well. And you can smell the chocolate and vanilla. You can really smell everything that went into this beer. They're very, very well balanced in terms of their flavor and their components. And it just smells amazing. Head's already starting to settle, so let me jump in. Mm. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Oh my God. Oh, every time, Prairie Artisan Ales. Every time. They just brew special, special, special beer. And I mean that sincerely. Okay. Try not to get overwhelmed by all the goodness. Okay. Up front, it's slightly sweet and it's also very rich. And then it opens into this really nice boozy quality. Now, some people are off-put by that, but let's be honest with ourselves here. This is a 12% ABV Imperial Stout. It's a big, big beer. It's a boozier beer. And you've heard me talk about this. On a higher ABV beer, I don't mind. Indeed, I actually like a little bit of that booze quality to come through. Let you know you're drinking something really, really big. Now, I don't want it to overshadow the flavors of the beer, but I have no problem with a little boozy back, and this has it. It's a lovely. It makes that warming sensation all the nicer and goes with it. Now, it opens up very largely into that kind of caramelly quality that they added in here, and you can taste the coffee in kind. The chilies really add more of a heat and aroma element. You can't really pick them out quite as well. I'm going to go in for another dive, experience the body and mouthfeel while I think about how the finish develops. Super heavy body. It's very heavy. The mouthfeel is very viscous. It's smooth, but it's viscous, and it's got a little bit of effervescence. But overall, it's a viscous, smooth mouthfeel. The finish develops exactly like I stated prior, and then kind of in the middle, before it starts to tail off, you get the vanilla that comes through, and the chocolate makes itself known, but it really pairs with the coffee, and it gives this nice roasty, earthy quality. And the sweetness from the caramel starts to mix with the coffee and the chocolate and the vanilla, and then it kind of sweetens it up, it livens it up, it gives it a little brighter, sweeter edge to it. And then it just tapers off, and it's still kind of a nice balance of earthy, roasty, from the deeply roasted malts, and I presume the coffee in there as well, a nice deep roast coffee, and mixes with the vanilla and the caramel and the toffee and the cocoa. So it really produces this beautifully balanced flavor profile that's got a really nice even curve, and they all kind of intermingle and interplay. This is just a fantastic beer. As a birthday present to themselves, you know, it's the gift that keeps on giving. This is another top-notch beer by Prairie Artisan Ales. I mean, I haven't had any that was like, oh wow, you know, that's just okay. Even the lowest rated beer that I had that I've tried from them was still top-notch, and this is excellent beer. Absolutely excellent beer. I'm going to take my sweet time enjoying the rest of this bad boy, 12%. It's meant to be sipped and enjoyed for a while. I'll come up with my rankings on this one, and then up next will be the Untitled Art Fudgesicle, also an Imperial Stout, 12%, as they all are again, out of Waunakee, Wisconsin. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that city's name. Nonetheless, this one ought to be really big and chocolate forward. The brewer stated indeed that it was brewed with a ludicrous, a legendary amount of Hershey's chocolate syrup. I'm not sure if there's any other type of chocolate that goes into it, probably paired with some chocolate malts. So I expect it to be quite chocolate forward. Maybe a little sweet. Possibly if they added a little lactose to sweeten it up as a Fudgesicle would be, I think we're going to be in for a treat. But Untitled Art's Fudgesicle coming up next. Okay, so moving on to beer number 2 of today's Imperial Stout review here on Independence Day. We move on to Untitled Art's Fudgesicle out of Waunakee, Wisconsin. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you know, please let me know in the comments. I would love to get it right. Nonetheless, Untitled Art really doesn't brew anything bad, at least not that I've had. They've all been top tier. So I'm really quite excited knowing just how freaking chocolatey this is. If the head brewer says just, you know, an ungodly amount of Hershey's went into this, I don't know if it's just Hershey syrup or if they use anything else, but nonetheless, we're going to find out here. So let's go ahead and get Fudgesicle cracked. But first, I'll hold up the can. The can art might be kind of hard to see. It looks really neat. And another neat thing that they do is they tell you who the artist is of their label art. And in this case, it is Teresa Navajo. And it looks really cool. So bravo, Teresa. Well done, can art. Let's get this cracked. Oh yeah, that's a beautiful sound. Got a little on the hand, a little splashback. Waste not, want not. Let's get this poured in the glass. Ooh, it's quite dark. It's reasonably thick. It doesn't look as thick as the Prairie, so I'm just trying to be, yeah, I don't want to get any more aggressive than that because it's forming a nice, really quite creamy head. Boy, this is going to be hard to get the whole can in there. And the outpour. I got close, but I didn't get the whole thing. Black is night. I mean, it's textbook Imperial Stout. It is pitch black. You cannot see a hint of light through it. As you can see here, the head bloomed very aggressively, and it is quite creamy, quite foamy. I'm going to see if I can get, you've seen me do this trick in prior videos. I know it's kind of gross, but you got to do what you got to do. Settle down the head. A little skin oil will start to break away those bubbles. They do not like the oil from your skin. So just going to give it a little swirl. Let that do its thing. See if I can get the last bit of this beer in here. Yes, yes, indeed I can. Okay. Just the sip from my finger, I can tell you it's quite chocolatey. It's hard to get a really good sense of it just from a little taste of overspill from your finger. But looks great. The head, I mean, honestly, I over poured it, but to say that it didn't create a really great head out of the can would be nonsense. I just poured a little too aggressively, but this beer wants to form a nice creamy stout head, which is lovely. I'm going to give it one more little swirl here. Just a little swirl, break this down a little bit more. Let's dive in for a sniff. Okay, the aroma isn't super pronounced. You've got to really get up in there and take a nice deep breathe through the nose to get it. But when you do, it rewards you with a beautiful mix of booze, like a boozy beer, and chocolate. It is chocolate in abundance. This smells so chocolatey, it's insane. You can also on the tail end get a little idea of the malts, and it's clear that they're quite deeply roasted. I want this head settled just a little bit further before I dive in for my first sip. It's still a little bit out of control, so I'm going to get a bit more aggressive with my head breakdown trick. And while that head's breaking down and those bubbles are popping, I'm going to go in for one more sniff. Yeah, again, it's really not pronounced. You got to really breathe deeply. But it's booze and chocolate and the nice roasty malt that's in there. There's no question about it. It smells like it's going to be quite deep, quite rich. Just from the sip from my finger from the overspill, I think it might be a sweeter Imperial Stout, kind of akin to some of the Hubbard's Cave Imperial Stouts that I've reviewed. And as a Fudgesicle, that's honestly, I mean, it goes well with it. Fudgesicles are sweet. You know what a Fudgesicle is. So if they're aiming to make a beer that tastes like a Fudgesicle, it should have some sweetness. But nonetheless, I don't want to wait any longer. The head's still a bit much, but I'm going to dive in anyway. Ooh, ooh, oh, that's dessert beer. That's dessert beer. I'll tell you, the taste reward is it matches the aroma. Doesn't always happen with beer, but it matches the aroma. Okay, this is really nice. Fudgesicle is an appropriate name for this beer because it really does put one in mind of a Fudgesicle. It's very deep, rich chocolate. There's a ton of chocolate in this beer. It's got a sweetness to it. It's not overtly sweet. It's just enough that it's not like a bitter chocolate presence. It's a sweeter chocolate, but it's not Hubbard's Cave sweet. And I don't mean that as a knock on Hubbard's Cave. It's different. This, I would say, is more balanced sweetness. Um, Ridiculously chocolatey. And you definitely do get that booze on the front exactly as I could smell it as the first thing in the aroma. It comes through on the profile and the flavor. And then the chocolate, just like I could smell in the aroma, it comes through in that order. And then the roasted malt. Again, I mean, the taste is mirroring the aroma, and the aroma was fantastic when you can finally get a whiff of it. It smells fantastic, albeit not a pungent aroma, and it tastes fantastic. This is exactly as advertised. This is Fudgesicle Imperial Stout. I'm going to dive in one more sip and see if I can break down body, mouthfeel, and finish. I would say it's a medium heavy body. It's not super heavy, even though it's 12% ABV. It's not super heavy. It's medium heavy. The mouthfeel is quite viscous. This is a very viscous beer. This is even more so viscous than the Prairie Artisan Ales Birthday Bomb I just reviewed. This has a lot of viscosity. I mean, it's thick. It really is thick. And it sticks around the mouth. And the lingering flavors are really chocolate fudge. That's what it tastes like. It really does taste like a Fudgesicle. They really got this right. If that's precisely what they were aiming for, I think that they nailed it in beer form. I don't know as though you could come closer to producing a Fudgesicle tasting beer than this. This is a winner. This is another beer like many others, and it happens a lot with big imperial stouts, especially if they get some sweetness to them. They're so big, and the ingredients with which they're brewed have so much forward presence that really it's heavy dessert beer. It's got a sweetness to it, and it tastes of desserts and dessert-like ingredients. I mean, this is a dessert beer. You finish with a nice, ribeye steak. You finish it off, nice hearty steak and maybe a side potato and Caesar salad, and you want to have that dessert just a little, but maybe the cheesecake is too heavy. You could go for this, still satisfy that sweet tooth and that beer tooth, and yeah, this is a winner, guys. This is a really, really well done Imperial Stout. I am really happy that I got to drink this. This is so good. So far, this Independence Day American Craft Brew experience and review session has been absolute top notch. This is great beer. I'm going to take my time going through while I come up with my ratings, and then when we come back, we'll go to our third and final beer, returning once again to Prairie Artisan Ales for the barrel-aged version of their Birthday Bomb. This is the exact same in every way, except it's been barrel-aged. Now, truth told, I do not know what type of barrel they used. I don't know what was formerly housed in it. If anything, I don't know what it's made out of, where it came from, and I don't know for how long. So it ought to be kind of interesting just to see what the barrel imparts and changes the first beer, but I can't wait. I'll come up my scores, and then we'll be back with the barrel-aged Birthday Bomb. All right, moving on to our third and final beer of today's Independence Day Imperial Stout review. So far, it's been excellent, and I expect it will finish off in that same excellent manner. We move back to Prairie Artisan Ales for their barrel-aged version of the Birthday Bomb. Everything about this beer is exactly the same as the Birthday Bomb we reviewed first. Same ABV, same ingredients, the whole 9 yards, except this one has been barrel-aged. Now, I don't know what type of barrel they used or how long or what was formerly housed in it. I'll read the label, see if they mention it. Nope, it just says barrel-aged. I couldn't find any information online about what they may have used, but nonetheless, let's get this poured in the glass. I expect this will look the same as the prior. Indeed, it does. Indeed, they are almost indistinguishable from one another. All right. Other than maybe I didn't pour the head quite as aggressively on this one. But nonetheless, it's still formed one, and it's holding as expected. It is absolutely pitch black. You cannot see through it at all. Did form a nice little tight head that I expect will dissipate pretty quickly here, but let's give it a sniff. Okay, so this does smell very much like the standard Birthday Bomb, except you can definitely smell the barrel aging. It smells to me like bourbon barrels. It could be some other type of barrel, but it smells strongly of bourbon. So my gut is that indeed this has been aged in bourbon barrels. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. The aroma is the same as on the prior. It's just got a little of what smells to me like a bourbon back. Let's jump in. Mm. Mm. Oh. Oh, that's nice. If the first one was nice, this is even nicer and more refined. Wow. It's actually quite a different beer with that barrel aging. Let me explain to you. Wow. Wow. And it just keeps coming in the finish. It's, wow. That's really, really good. Okay. So the barrel, it absolutely tastes like a bourbon barrel. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And that boozy quality that came on the front of the standard, the bourbon barrel side of this really kind of starts to marry with that boozy quality, and it tastes right. It still has a sense of booziness, but it's got a bourbony boozy sense about it, and it adds that extra layer of depth and flavor. Now, how all of the flavors in this beer actually develop on the heels of that bourbon barrel aging, I presume bourbon barrel aging, caveat, I'm, not going to keep correcting myself, but you know what I mean. Nonetheless, it really brings out the toffee and the caramel substantially. And the coffee and the chocolate kind of marry together a little more in this one than it did in the first. And the chilies, they don't really come through nearly as strongly. There's really no hint of the flavor of the chilies and just the slightest suggestion of the heat. The vanilla, I can't really find in it. I'm gonna dive another sip and see if maybe I think it might be getting lost somewhere between the toffee caramel and the chocolate coffee. But this is really, really good. For my money, this is an even better beer. It's a lot more refined, and the first one was incredible. This is even more so, in my opinion. Gonna dive back in. Okay, the vanilla is actually kind of mixing very much with that barrel aging flavor and that booziness on the front, and a little bit with the caramel and the toffee on the back. Gets lost once it starts to open into the chocolate and coffee notes, which is, kind of to be expected. Chocolate and coffee are going to make themselves very present in a beer if there's even any modicum of substance in the quantity used. Vanilla is a powerful ingredient, but with so much else that's going on and happening in this beer, the layers interplay how they do, and that's part of the beauty of the finish. And while it's very much the same as the first one, the way that the flavors pair together and where they come along in that finish is completely different. It is, for all intents and purposes, a completely different beer, even though it's the same beer, just barrel aged. That barrel aging really changes it, and I've said it time and time again, a good beer is excellent. And barrel aging isn't for every beer, and every beer doesn't have to be barrel aged. But when a really excellent quality beer with quality ingredients that's been built well gets paired in really excellent barrels, it can often, and it seems more often than not, turn into an even more special beer. And it's not to say a non-barrel aged beer isn't a special. It's just that extra it factor that it has, and it just adds a whole nother layer of depth to the beer. It's just so good. The mouthfeel in the body, the exact same as on the first one. The length of the finish, the exact same on the first one. For all intents and purposes, this is the same in every way except for the flavors that come through and how those flavors develop. It's a really, really great beer. Yet again, Prairie Artisan Ales, just every time I have something from them, I am just blown away. They are absolutely killing it with their Imperial Stout game. I'm going to take my time sipping slowly and enjoying this for as long as I can. I'll work up my ratings, and we'll come back and get them all ranked from top to bottom. All right. Now that I have gotten to thoroughly, and I do mean thoroughly, enjoy all three of these beers, We're going to go through and get their rankings from top to bottom. We are starting with the Prairie Artisan Ales Birthday Bomb Imperial Stout, brewed with cacao nibs, vanilla, coffee, chilies, caramel sauce, and toffee. 12% ABV out of Krebs, Oklahoma. Okay. For the aroma on this, it was very nice and it was rather pronounced. It wasn't as overwhelming as some of the top tier, just ridiculously aromatic beers, but it was well above average. I gave it an 8 out of 10. For the taste, I really enjoyed this one. I would have liked a little more vanilla to come through and maybe even a little bit more chili, but aside from that, all of the flavors that went into this beer, you could really taste in it, and they were really stinking well balanced. I gave it a 9 out of 10 for the taste. For the body on Prairie Artisan Ales Imperial Stout is kind of like none other. It's massive. It is just a massive body. This is kind of the benchmark in my mind for what an Imperial Stout's body can and should be. Perfect 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel, it mimics the body. It's another 10. It is just as thick and viscous as could possibly be, and it really adds to letting you pick out all the flavors and really extending that finish for such a ludicrously long time. Well done. The finish on this. The finish was indeed super long. Now, this is not as long as on some other beers, and indeed as long as some other Prairie Artisan Ale beers, but you know, all beers are different. But this is still, I mean, I only docked at 1 point. It was very long indeed. I gave it a 9. The head and retention on this, it formed reasonably well. Again, a beer this thick, not coming off a nitro tap at a bar. Again, it's just how well, how vigorously, how poorly, and cleanliness of glassware, you know, when you're talking about pouring at home. But it still did above average. I gave it a 7. Appearance-wise, this was textbook Imperial Stout for me, black as the night. I gave it a 10 out of 10. The balance on this, even though I was talking about the balance in terms of flavor and how I rated in the taste, when it all comes down to it, you're talking a beer this big with that many different ingredients, and I could still pick them all out. It's hard to be that picky, so I did go with my initial gut reaction, and I did give it a perfect 10 out of 10 for the balance. Feeling intangible, I loved this beer. I really did. Have I had better offerings from other brewers? Sure. Have I had better beers, in my opinion, from Prairie Artisan? Sure. Is this still a top-notch beer? You betcha. I gave it a 9. Finally, as an example of the style, as an Imperial Stout and a massive fan of Imperial Stouts, there aren't that many brewers out there at all that come close to brewing Imperial Stouts with the degree of proficiency and consistency as Prairie Artisan Ales. They are top tier. Perfect 10 out of 10 for the example. That brings the total score to a 92 out of 100, which is super high indeed. This is an A+, all-star, top tier, world-class Imperial Stout. Moving on to number 2, Untitled Art's Fudgesicle, also a 12% Imperial Stout. This one's out of Wenatchee, Wisconsin. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that city name properly. Correct me in the comments so I know for future. Aroma on this one. It was okay. It wasn't super pronounced, and you really had to get really close down in the glass and give a deep sniff, and then you could pick it up. But overall, it was just average. I give it a 5. Taste on this was absolutely, I think, about as close as anybody could get to making a beer taste like a Fudgesicle. I think they nailed exactly what they set out to do. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. The body on this one. The body was heavy. It's a big 12% Imperial Stout, but it wasn't as heavy as I expected. It's still well above average, but I only gave it an 8 for the body. The mouthfeel, on the other hand, was very thick, very viscous, and it also had this creamy quality to it, which knowing that it's a Fudgesicle Imperial Stout, I really appreciated it, and I did give it a perfect 10 there. The finish on this one. This was also very long, but not quite as long as top tier beers, and frankly, it wasn't as complicated of an offering as, say, the 2 Prairie Artisans, so there wasn't a ton of interplay amongst flavors. It was essentially chocolate and the malt bill, so you know, it was what it was, but I still give it a great score. I give it a 9. Head retention on this was about as perfect as it comes. It really bloomed up beautifully. I actually poured a little too aggressively. But to say that this beer didn't form a proper creamy, foamy stout head from the can would be insane. I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. Appearance-wise, just like the prior, black as the night, perfect 10 out of 10. Balance on this. This was not as complicated a beer as the two Prairie Artisan Ales offerings, but I don't think it was pretending to be. It was setting out to make a Fudgesicle tasting beer, and mission accomplished. I tasted what in beer form, it was essentially a liquid Fudgesicle. It really did taste like one. And I still also got to enjoy the excellent malt bill that they chose for this beer. So I give the balance on it a perfect 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Feeling an intangible, thinking about not only that it's Imperial Stout, but what it was they were doing with it, and how much I enjoyed it, I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. I don't know as though you could possibly do a Fudgesicle Imperial Stout any more on point than this. It's exactly what is advertised on the can. Finally, as an example of the style, as an Imperial Stout, this is excellent. It checks all the boxes for an Imperial Stout. And they nailed the mission of this beer. This is a Fudgesicle Imperial Stout. 10 out of 10 for me. Total score on this one, the exact same as the Birthday Bomb, a 92 out of 100. So far, 2 92s, ridiculously high scores. That brings us to our third and final offering, Prairie Artisan's Barrel Aged Birthday Bomb, the barrel aged version of the standard Birthday Bomb. Now, I couldn't find any information on the type of barrel used, nor how long it was aged, nor what was formerly housed in said barrel, i.e. is it French oak, is it American oak, is it some other wood, was it bourbon, was it rum, was it some other random spirit, was it wine? Couldn't find anything, but I could tell you my impression was quite strongly that they used a bourbon barrel. If I had to guess, I would guess oak, bourbon barrel. But I don't know for sure. So I'm going to keep looking to see if I can definitively confirm if my palate was deceiving me or not. Nonetheless, moving on, the aroma. It actually was a bit more pronounced, and really I think it was that barrel aging that helped kick it up. I give it a point higher than the standard Birthday Bomb. I gave it a 9. The taste on this, again, I think that barrel aging really changed the beer. While it was the same beer, that barrel aging really just refined it heavily, and it was just another level higher. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 for the taste. I absolutely loved it. It was beyond delicious. The body on this one, same as the prior, perfect 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel on this one, same as the prior, perfect 10 out of 10. The finish on this one. This was actually a little bit different in terms of the finish and how it developed itself than this one. The layers and the intermingling of the flavors were quite a bit different, but overall the length was pretty much the same, and it was nice and it was robust, and it was beautifully balanced of all the flavors in the finish. I gave it just 1 point shy of perfection because it wasn't quite as long as many other top tier finishes on beers. I gave it a 9. Head and retention on this one, I actually gave it 1 point lower than on the prior. I was actually a little bit more aggressive on the pour on this one, but it didn't form quite as well. It still formed ahead. It was above average, but just a 6 for me. Appearance-wise, just like the prior two, it was perfect 10 out of 10, black as the night. The balance on this one mimicked the standard Birthday Bomb. It was just a master class in how to balance your ingredients. Perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, I kicked it up a point higher than the standard Birthday Bomb, and it really was that barrel aging. It just added this extra special quality to the beer, and I think it well deserves the perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of this style, I give it the same as I did on the prior two beers. This was a lineup of exceptional Imperial Stouts, and they all well earned a 10 out of 10. That brings the total score on the Barrel Aged Birthday Bomb to 94 out of 100. So 2 points higher than the standard Birthday Bomb, and really only a 2 point spread here between all three beers. 94, 92, 92. So This Imperial Stout review to celebrate Independence Day was an absolute treat for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of my absolute favorite beer styles in the world. Brewers are getting ever more inventive with what they're doing with them, and it's just a great time to be a craft beer fanatic. And I really enjoyed making this one. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content. Hope you learned a little something. Maybe you could take away, I presume these are some beers you might want to seek out if you've yet to try them. They are all top tier, world-class Imperial Stouts, in my opinion. Well worth seeking. And while this was another Tavour review, not everything that Tavour does is ridiculously hard to find. These three beers are actually reasonably easy to find if you live near or in a big metro area, particularly if it has a Total Wine or some other large craft beer bottle shop. These are two very popular brewers that a lot of craft heads are into, so places are carrying them, and for good reason. These are all top-notch beers. But yeah, that's today's review. I really enjoyed it. I truly hope you did too. Again, I know I say this all the time, but it really does help if you just happen across my channel or if you've been watching many of my videos. It really does help if you consider liking and subscribing. It helps others find my channel and gets my content out there, and I am just trying to share as much as I can about the world of craft beer with as many people that will watch and listen. Further, if you want to know exactly when our videos drop, you can click the notification bell. It will let you know right as soon as they go live on YouTube. Starting out, and in fact, in a few weeks, we're going to be adding a third video per week. Right now, we're at 2 per week. They drop on Sundays and Tuesdays at 5 p.m. I'll tell you now, but if you need the reminder, you can click the bell. But ladies and gents, that's all I have. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. Cheers.